Recording, and let's start the TST meeting. Looks like we have Zolt, Ali, Andy, and myself, plus a number of other people connected. Mark, you're not there.
Sarah is here.
Oh, and Sora, thank you. All right, so we've collected over the last couple of weeks a number of proposals. So let's start with those, then we'll come back to other general discussion. I think should start with the easy one, which is the Volt hardware abstraction. Ali, do you want to talk about that for a couple of minutes? Or Zolt?
Ali, which one do you prefer?
Sure. We can tag team this. So the idea is to build a agent for access devices, at least initially. While even though this agent itself could be generalized to be used for other things like switches or DOCSIS or whatever, but the general idea is initially to integrate OLT support for the microsemi, the Tibit, and potentially other vendors that show up. I don't know how deep you want me to go into
So the assumption is going to be that the devices don't natively speak, for example, OpenPO. So this agent will run on the compute nodes of
yes.
And
yes. So
yeah, it's the mute. I think that's mute. Is that you, Ali?
do you think that's a generally applicable? Is that the right place to do the hardware abstraction? Way to do it?
Yeah. So I think it's the right way to do it in terms of getting resiliency and desired scale, so that we can have failover of devices, so that they can fail to other hardware abstraction layers that live in containers on some compute node, as opposed to having just agents on the device immediately that are tightly bound to the device. This gives people greater flexibility, and beyond the technical reasons why you want to do that, it's kind of in the requirements that AT&T has laid out.
Okay, that's good. And the Tibit and other hardware vendors are on board with this? Helping?
Yeah, they're part of the proposal. I mean, at least Tibit is. Microsemi, we still need to talk to them. My understanding is that when you buy a Celestica device, you also get a license to use their software, and I am told that means that you can also write to their API. So I think we're all in the clear to write our own driver for the microsemi devices. So that's my understanding now. We may want to get it checked more by someone who understands these things better than I do, but that's my understanding.
Great. This sounds great. I mean, my only issue that I raised was whether this rose to the level of a separate Vera project, or if it was more a team or whatever within what we already have. I don't feel real strongly. I'd kind of prefer to stay away from a lot of fragmentation there and view us as having Cord as much as possible with multiple teams as opposed to multiple projects. But that's not a hard and fast rule. Zolt, any other?
The two comments I would add is in terms of placement of the abstraction software, it is a requirement that we not only be able to execute this on the cloud, on the Cord pod, in which case, as Ali described, it will provide additional features in terms of additional scale, additional high availability scenarios, but also has to be able to execute on the device if the circumstance requires. That's one. The second one, related to your last question, the Sorry, I get distracted. I lost my thought. What was the
Well,
last topic you?
it was just about whether this was a separate JIRA.
Yes. So on that, there is one specialty about this, which is, um, whether we can push back on AT&T or not. But currently, AT&T would like to be able to potentially utilize this piece of software in relative independence of the overall core design. And depending on, later on, right now, I think not having a separate Jira or having a separate Jira doesn't really matter. But later on, early next year, when this supposedly gets into the AT&T labs, there is a possibility that the solution at that time is going to be very unlike Cord in a Cord holistic sense. It's sort of cherry picking certain parts of Cord, like ONOS is in, but perhaps other parts of Cord not. And depending on the nature of the problems that may need to be tracked in Jira, I think at that time I can decide whether it's too strongly integrated or not. You see what I mean? It's just the circumstances where the project is a little bit of an outlier in that sense.
Well, I get your point. On the other hand, I think there will always be cherry picking, and so we can,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So
absolutely.
They're going to bring their own engineering teams, and they're going to have their own processes and whatnot.
Yeah.
Until really strong motivation, let's go ahead and keep it.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. The main focus right now is that Oli has created the repo. We started with a temporary repo outside of the open Cord, and we started piling up some of the basic infrastructure code so that we have a good bootstrap for the project. This week we're going to move it into the official open Cord repo and then keep coding. So Jira is our last focus right now.
Sure. That's great. Anyone else have questions or issues?
I have a question just for clarity's sake. This is a project proposal, not a collaboration proposal, correct? I mean, there's no organization here. This seems to be something that existing community members are suggesting as a new project.
Yes. This is a project proposal.
Yeah.
So, I forget if you'd already put up a wiki page, but we'd like to get one just so people have a landing page for the project. That would be, include a lot of what was in the original proposal, I suppose.
Sure, we can do that.
Sort of a design overview. So just a quick question about generalizing beyond Volt and Doxis was what I was about to say. I know you can't solve all problems at once, but is that a consideration?
It's definitely a consideration in the sense that we should never do things that are against that. So we will keep that in mind, although no active coding will be done just for that goal. But when we have decisions, we will keep that in mind to avoid a need to re-architect later on.
Good. That would, this sounds great.
So also, it may be worth noting that the general high-level view of the architecture looks very similar to, say, something like ONOS, where we have a northbound API, which in this case comprises of like OpenFlow, netconf, REST. Then we have a core subsystem, a core system in the middle. Then we have southbound plugins, and these plugins can be, speak to an OLT API as much as they can speak to a Doxis API, as much as they should be able to speak to a G.fast API. So when we're building this, we're not in the core and the northbound. We don't make any assumptions about the underlying technology. So of course, I mean, they're the devil's in the details, but in theory, nothing should preclude from another technology plugging in.
That's great. I mean, I like this just from the point of view is it will ultimately spin off another quote unquote platform. It'll be the access technology platform or whatever. That can be plugged into different places. So it all sounds good. Anyone else have questions for Zsolt or Ali?
Yeah, this is sort of. I had a quick comment. There's a number of projects in the industry where you have a component and then you add an HA in the end to talk about the high availability version of that project or component. And when I look at this, to avoid confusion, I just recommend not calling it Board HA, but instead calling it Board HAL, because just to avoid confusion with high availability.
So we thought about that, except that Volta versus Volt Hal sounds a bit like Volt Hell. So we just had to stay away from that. But I mean, I see your point.
Yeah, I think maybe the way to address it is not necessarily to change the name of the project itself, but in any description, when we describe what it is, then spell out with the L. And I agree that confusion can potentially be there. Unfortunately, there are only 26 letters in the English alphabet and only a few hundred words that engineers use. So it's a half an hour discussion went into the naming, so I don't want to rehash it. But it's a very good point. Unfortunately, it's very hard to address.
Anyone else? Favor of including this as adding this as a project? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
+1.
Any objections? All right, thanks. So we have a set of collaborator proposals. One of them we don't actually have the proposal, but there was quite a bit of an email exchange, so I thought we would talk about it to see if there's anything we needed to do to push it forward, and that's Exfo. I don't know them, but Saurabh, I think they were contacting you.
No, they didn't contact me. They just contacted the TST, and I happened to reply. Well, initially they wanted a meeting, and since everyone was submitting proposals, I suggested they submit a proposal as well. And then I haven't heard from them, so maybe we need to ping them again to see where they're at.
Okay, so there's nothing to do here. Then I will ping them for see if they're going to come up with a proposal. I don't know if this was the order in which we received them, but we have Mellanox as a collaborator. Let me pull that one up. I wonder if anyone has firsthand information about them.
So this is sort of again, we've had some discussions with their product person or marketing person, and we discussed what are the potential things that they could contribute to. One of them was Mellanox makes Ethernet or top of rack switches as well. We could, for example, look into their switch and how it can support OpenFlow, just like Broadcom supports OpenFlow via OFTPA. Mellanox could support OpenFlow in similar ways to be used in our hardware fabric. That's one option. The second option is that they make server NICs, and we actually use their server NICs today. And so any help that we can get from them for a number of issues like, for example, VXLAN offloading, processing offloading, that's something that they could help us with. So these were the two things we discussed, the NICs as well as the switches. I haven't read their proposal yet, but I'm assuming it's around, well, as I stare at it right now, there's a table over there where the first thing they mention is the NICs, the second thing they mention is the switch, and then they talk about NPUs as well. So my recommendation is that, I think they could be very beneficial to this project, but I would have to look closely and deeper into this proposal, which I'm sorry I haven't read it yet.
So my reading of the proposal is, and maybe I'm reading too much between the lines, but it doesn't look like they're proposing any. Their deliverable is what they already deliver. I mean, we've got the hardware, so it strikes me that what they're offering is to make it quote unquote available and maybe answer questions about it. I don't see them putting engineering resources. For example, I could imagine them saying, we'll stand up a pod with our hardware to demonstrate it so that everyone else can then use it. But I don't see them going that far. But
I mean, with the risk of stating no views, obviously the ideal offering from a company like Mellanox would be to say, hey, we are going to make the Cord concept work for our switches, which includes setting up a pod, or either providing a pod or setting up a pod, and then getting the necessary additional software pieces in place so that just as we can run on the Cord Edge devices, we can run on the Mellanox devices, and that includes OFDPA pipeline extensions and what have yous. Obviously, if they don't do that, they just provide the hardware, then the only way this could actually become a working solution is that if the ON Lab or the existing community puts resources on it, and that means fragmenting focus, and that we have to be very careful with.
yeah, I agree. I wish they had said they were going to bring up a pod, but I don't see that in their write-up.
Yeah, it's because it's not easy, right? I mean, they can't just plug in their switch instead of the Broadcom switch and say it works, because it's going to take a fair amount of work.
It is, and we aren't going. I think Zolt's absolutely right. Our fragmenting attention right now is not going to happen. So
what I was trying to get to is that maybe we should have a discussion with them. And maybe there should be sort of the generic message that we can. I mean, is there a point for hardware vendors to become officially affiliated with the Cord project if all they do is provide additional hardware that we potentially don't have enough time to bring up, as opposed to encourage them and maybe set the bar that, hey, if you do this, please provide at least 1 or 2 engineering resources so that they can work with their own lab team and the Cord team to actually make use of that hardware. And whether Mellanox is open to that discussion or not, I don't know whether we know that or not.
no, that's it. That I completely agree. That's how I would prefer to deal with this particular proposal. Invite them, and maybe they're willing to step up, and that would be great to learn. But establishing the bar would be a good thing.
What sort of? I would be interested in all these startups and other people's thoughts too on this.
It sounds okay to me. I think we should do that.
I'm still trying to find the proposal. I can't seem to find it in my email, but that's maybe because my email's a mess right now.
So I will read the quote-unquote deliverables, and they have the Connect X Spectrum. Well, they've got the hardware and availability immediately upon approval of the proposal. So they make the hardware available immediately. I don't know if that actually means making copies, instances of the hardware. Are they going to ship us some? That's not clear. Then they have various bits of software that are available in a major Linux distribution. Okay, so the software is available, open source, no doubt. And then beta available now for ASAP direct targeting upstream into OBS. It's an optimization, it sounds like. I don't know the particulars of it. So basically, it sounds like they're making some hardware available. Not clear if they actually ship as hardware, and they're making their software, which is in Linux, available. But there's no mention of integrating in any way or quote unquote demonstrating. And just looking at the resources they're putting into it, I would say, I'm guessing not. They're putting architects, solution architects in. But let's invite them.
Yeah, we should invite them out and see what they're willing to do themselves, because I mean, it's all very nice that people come and propose things, but if they have their own, their own agenda for doing that, then it doesn't really help us. I would rather have them take on lead to either build integration into Cord and actually do that.
Okay. Any objection to that pushback response?
I wouldn't even call it pushback. It has to be a dialogue until we know that they are unwilling to do that.
Agreed, agreed. I mean, these proposals are here to have a conversation around them.
Right. Thank you. I chose the wrong word.
Okay, so the
So
next step is that you're gonna, the Cord Tst will reach out to them.
would it make
I will
sense?
reach out to them and invite them and just give them the general feedback that we're interested in having a full pod set up with their hardware, but we would need help with that. Okay. Next, Xilinx. So they're so they've got SmartNIC software. I believe they've been talking to the Cord team, but I have not had a chance to talk with them directly, only very quickly in passing at the summit. Does anyone have any firsthand information beyond what's in the proposal?
I don't.
All right, so they've got an FPGA-based SmartNIC, and they're going. I mean, the buzzword in here is acceleration as a service. So they'll do flexible packet classification. They'll do compression, decompression as an NFV use case. Packet capture and analytics is another use case. So wireless acceleration offloads. There's a lot of potential here, and understanding how to leverage smart NICs sounds useful and interesting. I wish go ahead.
So based on that, I would say that the topics they are suggesting are extremely relevant and potentially very powerful. So definitely a huge plus there. The question again is are they proposing these topics as that somebody else will actually deal with them and they can provide hardware? Same question as with Mellanox, or are they proposing actual projects that they can put some people behind and collaborate?
Well, they have a deliverables line that says implementation of example applications on SmartNIC.
Okay.
APIs and drivers for full integration into ONOS as per Cord requirements.
Thank you. So that's a yes then.
Yes. So they are. So I believe they're working with the Cord. If they're not plugged into the Cord group community, then that's problematic. But if to the extent they are, that would be a good outlet. But we don't have anyone Cord related on the call, I don't think.
Does Mingun come to any of these?
What was that?
I don't think Mingun's been to one of these meetings yet, has he?
He's one of the Cord Tst people, right? So,
does he know that?
It's a good question. Larry, does Mingun know that he's in the Cord Tst and he should be coming to these meetings?
Yes, he knows. Well, I will go back to him and with this particular proposal as an action item, and this is not so much a dialogue back with the proposer, but with the Cord group that we really need their input on these discussions. Does anyone else want to take a different action for the time being?
So we are deferring basically voting, or because I'm willing to vote on it based on what Sarah read. So we can defer it, but
my only reservation is if the Cord, let's call it the Cord roadmap, includes working on these examples or this implementation.
Actually, it's an Cord related thing. I mean, it can be used generically in the Cord platform for a number of things. I mean, if you think about it, Microsoft bought an entire company, Altera, for exactly this purpose. And Altera is the Xilinx competitor in FPGAs. So,
if we're comfortable enough with it, we could go ahead and approve it. My only reservation is that they are truly plugged in with Cord as a proof of concept or delivering working solution. So Zolt, you seemed okay with it.
I think because of the importance of the topic and I'm willing to vote for it, but I think in general it is useful if any of these project proposals have a liaison or sponsor, in the sense that somebody is already plugged into the project. It just gives the project a lot more potential to grow into something that is tied into the entire architecture in the system. So it would be useful to check that.
I have a small question. It's actually Intel that bought Altera, but because of the Microsoft's use of Altera chips in their servers in Azure.
Yeah, Azure is using this concept of offloading into an FPGA-based smart NIC in the entire Azure. It's very powerful.
Well, so let me ask a hypothetical. Let's suppose ImCord says we never heard of these guys, hypothetically.
Are we still interested?
Are we still interested? And it sounds like maybe we are, and maybe it would take some effort on our part to get them integrated into into the roadmap, so to speak. But
well, there's another question, which is, I have the suspicion that the solution is not OpenFlow capable or not OpenFlow aligned. I don't know whether that should be a showstopper, but it would definitely help if it was on the short term, because it would make it a lot more obvious to tie it into ONOS and therefore tie it into the entire platform. But I don't know, maybe that would be something that would be useful to check with them.
Well, I mean, to the question about if they're plugged in, I'm going through my email. Tom has copied me on a number of threads with Xilinx, so he's at least plugged in and is excited about this. I don't know if that is the kind of the endorsement you're looking for, if you're looking more for like the technical endorsement versus.
No, I mean, I think that should be enough. I mean, that means that they're already plugged in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with accepting this one too. Let me ask: are there any objections to accepting? All right, I'll take that as concurrence, and we will accept them as a collaborator.
Right, great. So I'll move forward on approving them then.
It would be good to have a conversation with them and broadly ImCord team, but we'll do that as on the side. Okay, one last proposal. Find it. Villatech. So this one was from long enough ago that I had lost it deeper in my mailbox. This is a network solutions company, my interpretation, and they want to offer ONOS and Cord solutions to their customers. It sounds first of all like they're building a pod for themselves so that they can then demonstrate it to their customers. It sounds like mostly they will be doing quote unquote understanding customer requirements, looking for projects they could apply the technology, leading demos. They're Chicago based, so they would be leading demos throughout the Midwest, developing meetups. So it's a little bit more on a marketing side than it is a deep engineering technical side. David, do you know anything firsthand?
Yeah, I mean, they're already ONOS collaborators, and for background, we have accepted some ONOS collaborators who have done more of a marketing contribution versus a development contribution. You know, the collaboration model is there to recognize organizations that are contributing, not necessarily specifically contributing to code, so I think that's okay. And at least for Onos, and I believe also for Cord, they do some development work. They're doing front end stuff for Onos, and it sounds like they maybe are proposing something similar for Cord.
We are using social media and our face-to-face meeting with customers to promote and sell the Cord solution as well. Then it just mentions eCord, RCord, ACord.
I
ACord.
think they reference Steven as the front end developer who's working for Onos. They reference him in the proposal, I assume.
So, right. So Steven's working on an Onos in the Onos GUI brigade.
Yes.
How big are they?
They're a small, I don't know exactly, but they're a small startup.
They're a startup out of
Chicago. And Steven's based in England.
Oh, Villa Tech is named after this Miguel Villarreal.
I assume so, yeah.
It's his company.
Yeah.
I think I've met him once.
Yeah, he was at the Cord Summit. He's an ambassador.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if he wants to promote, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great to recognize.
Yeah, I'm fine with that as well. Other comments?
I mean, are there GUI contribution opportunities you want them to be working on?
Well, if they're willing to contribute on the GUI side, I'm sure we can find stuff.
This is not. This is you're talking about the Cord GUI.
Yeah, but I mean, he's listing Steven here as a resource that they plan to put on Cord. I mean, we can have Matteo reach out to them and plug them into GUI opportunity.
We can, as soon as Matteo's back, we can do that.
Part of the deliverables they've said they have something called VTech R. It's their IoT application that they want to integrate into the Cord solution. It would be nice to understand what that is.
Yeah, that could be an interesting use case / demo for us.
Sure, he'd be happy to dial into the next week's call if you'd like to ask him.
Yeah, I'd actually like to hear more about the IoT app. But we can go ahead and approve it if there are no objections. Okay. Take that as concurrence.
If this is approved.
Yeah.
And who wanted to reach out about scheduling the appointment for the demo?
Well, I don't know if we're going to see a demo, but just to talk about what they have on the IoT side, just to learn more about it.
Yeah.
If you're willing to do that, that would be great.
I'm happy to. I'm not. I can ask him to post it in the thread. I'm not technical. I wouldn't know what to do necessarily with his answer, but I'll ask him.
Yeah, that would be a good start.
These meetings that we want to schedule with different folks, Villa Tech, Xilinx, or whoever, are these meant to be in the Cord Tst time, which is now, or separate from it?
As long as we can fit it and we aren't overwhelmed with other work, I'd be the easiest if we could just fit it into these meetings.
Okay. That sounds good to me, like a 30-minute max or something like that.
Yeah, we would need to keep it capped. And
it's good because we've all settled on this time already. So
yeah.
If we cap a 30-minute max at one such meeting per weekly meeting.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. I mean, as it is, we've got 20 minutes left. We're done with the official agenda, and we can open the floor for other topics people want to discuss. Does anyone have anything?
Are we listing these things anywhere on the wiki? Like who is the proposer and what is the proposal and this has been approved and this is pending or things like that? There is a place on the wiki for that?
It's not on the wiki. It's on Google Docs. There's a spreadsheet, and everybody here may not have access to it, but if you'd like, I certainly can. I mean, it's on the I assume you could get access to it. It's not locked down or anything.
So David, what's on Google is just Docs is just your keeping track of all these so we don't drop. Is that right?
So yeah, there's a lot of information. It's the people who are interested in the pipeline at some point, like Tom had said, hey, this person should be on your radar. So at all points of the pipeline that I know about, it's in here. And once we have a proposal that's in review, there's a tab that shows you all the reviews that are current and what their status is. And then once they're approved, I'm keeping, and maybe that's a good thing for me to walk through. If you want me to walk through that now, I can, or because I think, especially as we get bigger, one thing we found out for ONOS, now that there's 30, 40 organizations, it's useful to have some sort of sense of who's still active, who's not active, because you can't keep it all straight in your head anymore. And so we're putting some mechanisms in place to have some tracking there, so we can know who to delist or who to reach out to get, see if they want to re-engage. If you're curious, I can walk you through that spreadsheet.
If you could, yeah, I would just take a minute to send the link out, and we would
Share it?
No, I mean, I think David was saying walk through it right now. Like,
well, I understand, but I'd like to see the link.
Sure. All right, I'll share it just 1 second. Larry, John, Ali. So Larry, Saurabh, John, Ali, who else?
so
So, and Andy,
Andy. Andy, the Princeton email, what's the correct email for that?
yeah, that's probably fine.
That's okay. Okay, so anybody else?
That'll do for now, and then we can make sure the rest of the TST gets it later.
All right. Okay, I just sent it. Do you want me to project and I'll walk people through it, or just talk through it if people pull it up?
I can share it if you want.
Great.
Then you can- yeah.
So I'll give people a minute to pull it up, then I'll just walk you through the tabs.
Sounds good.
So this first tab is partners. And as I had mentioned before about tracking activity, one thing that you'll see, if you look at columns G, H, and I, you can see it says active in I, active in H, active in G. Those are references to the ONOS releases. Again, we just wanted some sort of activity to indicate which of our partners, we'll get to the collaborators in a minute, but this is the partner-specific stuff. We wanted to have some sort of indication on who is stepping up with resources. Again, it just helps us to understand engagement and helps us to understand where maybe there's opportunities to go deeper. If somebody's not engaged, that will give us a chance to reach out, invite them to contribute at a deeper level. Or, going forward, we'll see if somebody's dropped off. If somebody was active in 2 releases and then they weren't active in the next 2 releases, that's, also valuable information. What we could do here is add an active in Cord release column as well. We've got Cord release 1, 2, etc. So if that's useful for you, we could do the same in here. Again, I think it's, in my mind, one of the most valuable metrics that we can have in terms of community health and community growth is, retention and engagement. So this would really show who's actively engaged and if going forward, are they retained or do they drop off. So that's what this is. Jono, could you go to the next tab, please? This next tab, the collaborators and process, it's the pipeline. And this is a mix of both ONOS and Cord collaborators. And you can see it's quite long. It scrolls down. We've had an explode. I've been here for almost a year now, and the pipeline's really exploded. So it's a lot of people are interested. So if you're curious to go through and see, like, again, who Tom has connected me with and had me put on this radar, you might want to scan through this. I try to keep a track of, what's Cord related, what's ONOS specific. And then at the very top of this tab, you can see that the first is approved and coordinated on announcement. Basically, once you approve something in here, I work with that organization and our PR people to get their logos on the website and then to get an announcement about their contribution in an upcoming press release. So after this, I'll get the logos up and I'll talk to Meredith and Sarah, our PR people. And then if you scroll to the next tab, You can see this is the ONOS proposal reviews. This is just to show you how they do it. They're pretty methodical about it. You can see that they keep track of a vote. They have been fairly rigorous. They've rejected some things. And then if you scroll, Jonah, if you could go to the Cord proposal review, we can make use of this going forward. It's not, it's a little bit more bare bones. It's not as rigorous yet as the ONOS one. It may not need to be, but you can see the two for comparison. And then if you go to the next tab, this existing ONOS collaborators, again, because since the number of collaborators has gotten really high, we can't keep track of the activity in our head anymore. So you can see columns F, G, H, and I as us taking at least some sort of stab at tracking status and retention. Initially on column I, we just did kind of a gut check, but then going forward, I think we'll be a little bit more systematic. Every time there's a release, we're going to track, are they active in this release, yes or no? And again, for me, at the very least, as trying to indicate, trying to get some sort of indication about the health of the community, this is very helpful. Again, if somebody is not active, that gives me an opportunity to reach out and try to get them more deeply involved. If somebody was active and is no longer active, that's really good data as well. And so if you go to this next tab, the existing Cord collaborators, we've inherited some of the status because before Cord launched as a separate project, we were kind of munging all of the collaborators together. So we did have at least some status activity at the time. Then I separated those organizations off into a Cord collaborator tab, and then as new people come in, we won't have any of that historical status. So if we want to do, again, kind of a column per release and track these are the organizations that have done something for that release, we can, and I think it would be useful data to have. And then lastly, if you could go to the very last tab, that member growth chart. This shows every time an organization has been added, I add it here. And again, I'm mixing ONOS and Cord together here. We can separate them out if that's needed or useful. And you can see at the very bottom just the growth chart. I think it's it's a graphic that gets used a lot in presentations, so it's useful to have. But if it's also helpful to know like exactly when an organization got involved, this is a reference place to go because it breaks it out. When organizations join by any given month. So I kind of breezed through that, and there's a lot of content here, and apologies for not having shared it more widely earlier. But if it's useful for us to make use of, we certainly can. Any questions, comments?
Definitely useful, including just tracking that people continue to get involved or be involved. It's not just clear this hurdle and then collaborator for life.
Exactly. I mean, I think we've talked about this on the mailing list before. My preference is to be very lenient on the initial approval, but then be more rigorous on did you actually do what you say you're going to do. I mean, you want to, as Ali said earlier, it's great that people step up and are enthusiastic about doing a thing, so let them do the thing. And if they don't do the thing, we can delist them. It really costs us nothing to remove them from the website, and it costs us nothing to add them to the website either. So, I mean, we don't have to be, it's not a scarcity about the number of collaborators we can have, as long as we're tracking and being rigorous about, weeding out the people who don't actually contribute.
Yep. Well, one thing this suggests is that there are probably companies that we are actively working with. Tibbet just came to mind because we talked about them earlier that we ought to solicit something official from them and get them listed. So that would be one thing we ought to do.
Yeah, for sure. And if I can help with that, let me know. I mean, that's just a learning that I have. If you recognize people, they're more likely to stay involved long term, and they see that there's a mutual relationship here. So I mean, I think it's good community practice to recognize people if they haven't been recognized.
Agreed. So there's a lot of information here. This is great. I need to think about the way to most efficiently use it during calls. It's a lot of good background information, but
exactly, yeah. None of this none of this is required that you make use of it, but if it's helpful, we certainly can.
I mean, is the ONOS TST working through the document at different points, doing audits or whatnot?
I mean, Jonah can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the ONOS TST mostly makes use of this proposal review tab.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's a good place to start. All right.
And then Bill, Grew, and I review the other tabs on a regular basis.
Is there anything else on this or other topics?
I mean, I would guess just say, do we want to track some sort of per release member activity, like we're doing on those columns about the ONOS release?
I get the connection, but I wasn't quite clear on what you were proposing or asking.
Here, you go to the
I'm not
Yeah,
sure anything
yeah.
else, but
are people able to see what we're sharing?
no, I'm not sharing.
Oh, you're not. Oh, you're not. I'm sorry. I thought you were sharing. If people could go to the existing ONOS Collaborator tab.
Yep.
Do you see column F, G, H where it says active in I, active in H, active in G?
Yep.
So basically what we're doing with ONO is to, again, track the strength and health of the community and to see if people who had said we're going to do X, Y, and Z actually did it. Bill puts together release notes and that track these organizations contributed in any given release, and then I keep track of them here, and it's a way to indicate a couple of things. One, if we want to be lenient on the collaborator proposal acceptance, this would be able to track, are people not doing what they said they were going to do, and then we can delist them. And then there's a bunch of other stuff that we can do as well. I mean, we can, if somebody has been active in 2 releases and then drops off, we can try to re-engage them. Maybe they left for some reason, they weren't happy.
Right.
Maybe we can...
So I get the value of it. What I was trying to understand is, in your description of it, it was that you and Bill were maintaining this information. I was wondering if the ONOS TST was actively doing an audit here, or how that was working.
No, I think it's mainly David and Bill.
Yeah, David, yeah. Bill and Grew and I look at this. But I mean, the Cord Tst can be more involved in this if you want to see kind of the back end. Like, for example, if you want to do just, as a matter of fact, a 3-month collaborator review proposal, we could do that every time, if we want to approve somebody and kind of have like a follow-up check 3 or 6 months later, we could do that.
Okay, so that's just, we could, doing it the way you've been doing it with ONOS sounds great, but the TST could choose to review the current status periodically, every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever.
Exactly. And so far, we've been doing it a little bit more ad hoc. Like Bill has suggested that we delist a handful of people. So if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see we've marked 6 organizations as inactive.
Got it. Okay.
But for tracking purposes, I would need some sort of content, like now that the first Cord release is out, like if you have a list of these are the organizations that were active in that release, I can then input this into here.
Okay. Yes,
and if that exists, maybe I missed it, but
no, I mean, we don't have anything like this recorded anywhere that I know of. It's in our collective heads, probably. Anyone else have thoughts about how you'd like to make use of this or be involved in it beyond the proposal review? All right, let me work with David and Bill to represent what we know about Cord, and I think coming back and reviewing this periodically will be a good thing to do.
yeah, that sounds good, Larry. And maybe you just join the regular review meetings that Bill and Grew and William and I have.
Sure. Yep, that makes sense.
All right. I'll add you to those.
Is there anything else? All right, I will contact the folks that we talked about and try to get them lined up, or at least one of them lined up for next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.